ones do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about?
Oh, okay. I kind of skipped that.
Oh, you did completely? Was there other books that you just wanted to talk about?
I screwed up my homework. Okay, you talk about yours while I look at my list and I come up with a couple honorable mentions. How about that?
Okay, these are just books that I really liked. One is like ones that like really made me think and rethink and keep thinking. So that was Tightrope. Again, this is Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Woodan's newer book.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And it is about his hometown in Oregon, and it's about the opioid addiction. And like that, so many of his high school classmates remain there, have been in prison, addicted, and like that rural experience of the last, well, I mean, probably 30 years or so in America.
At least 20 years. Yeah. I feel like, you know, meth was like a thing. I mean, it was different in Iowa because it was like meth labs, not necessarily opioids,
right.
Yeah.
But so it's really good, and it does Americans Reaching for Hope. It just put things in a very different perspective, and in the very much the same vein, very similar. But this is an ethnography, Strangers in Their Own Land by Arlie Russell Rothschild. I'm not sure how to say that. And this is about anger and mourning of the American right, on the American right. And she goes to, I want to say Louisiana, but Louisiana. Yes.
I think it was Louisiana. You told me about it. Yeah.
So, and it was really, really well done. And the other ethnography that taught me a ton, and I continue to think about as well, is Evicted, by Matthew Desmond. Milwaukee. He goes to Milwaukee and is talking about homelessness and the housing crisis, and the long-term effects of that throughout time. So, and on communities and families, and it was very well done. It was very good too. And then there's always just this book.
Yes, of course. That one about Hannah.
Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown out of AK Press. Everyone should read this.
For and then all of those who haven't heard your shtick for that one.
No, it's true though. But and AK Press is doing, like, they have a bunch of Emergent Strategy series now, and I really enjoy all of those books. And there's a couple more coming out in 2022. Yay. I just saw AK Press just sent out their 2022 publishing list, and so yeah.
Oh, nice. Yay. You're super excited.
I know. I love it.
Okay, so I did look through my list, and I have two that I just want to mention.
Yep.
For no like particular reason other than I'll like tell you why I think they're cool. So the first one, and you won't be surprised by this one because you know how much I love this book, is Great Soul, Mahatma Gandhi and his struggle with India, which we also read for our book club, which also I don't think was a great book club book. But I love it. I think that book is so well done, and it makes Gandhi a person. It makes Gandhi not just
Gandhi.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You know,
Gandhi.
This is like Gandhi the human.
Yes.
And the human that like lived in the midst of corruption and sexism and racism. And he wasn't immune.
No. And with respect, I think that the interesting thing that particular historian does is it's not about demeaning or being like, oh my gosh, you guys have all been lied to, like, let me rip this veil off, and like,
it wasn't that.
It wasn't in that sort of an intent or with that kind of a voice. It was just like, nope, flesh and blood, human, did great things, and some real questionable ones.
And some sketchy stuff, you know.
Little sketch here and there.
Little sketch, and he had his moments, you know. And I love it for that. It's not like the easiest read in the world, you know, or anything like that. And it definitely wasn't like the greatest book club book ever. But I absolutely think it is so worth reading. I read it twice now, and I know I'll read it, you know, at least twice more probably before I die. Like, it's just that good of a book. It's that well written. And the story that he tells is super awesome. So that's one honorable mention. The other one, this one is sort of interesting. This one's called The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. And this one was also one that I read during like my whole like modern goth literature thing. But this one isn't actually in modern times. It takes place in 19th century England in a manor house, whatever. But this book was so well written and so good. It's like literally about this like descent into madness of this woman, and like she gets to this point where she doesn't know what's real anymore. And the way the author does it, the silent companions are there. I don't want to like ruin it. It's so creepy and so good.
Okay, you're gonna have to send me that one too, because
I got it from the library and I just like saw it on a list, just some book list I saw, like, good Gothic lit, and it's just like I found it just fascinating, and like just this woman's journey, and like you're in her head, right? Like it's
right.
And so you're going through all of this with her, and like all of a sudden you realize you're not really sure like what's real and what's not. Like you think and now all of a sudden you don't know, and it's like you're there with her because she doesn't know now. Anyway, it's super good. It's not like scary, it's just like super creepy and and a really good read. That's my other one, The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. Really good, October, November, time of year, when it's just sort of like creepy and dark and rainy. That's when I read it. I think I read it when in October.
Speaking of like the whole creepy Gothic, like that was a genre. That's a genre, like the horror, Gothic, mystery, dark is like a genre that I've been like exploring more these last couple of years. And actually I did have one honorable mention, like in a good way, like that surprised me in a good way on this was the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires.
I have seen that.
By Grady Hendrix. And there was I was so surprised that I enjoyed it, that I found it entertaining. Best book I read this year? Absolutely not. I think I've already gotten rid of it, like gave it to somebody else to read, like not something I need to keep on my shelf. But I remember on the back of when I was writing my review, and there was one of the things, on the jacket cover things called it cheeky. And like, that was exactly the like right word for like what this was, or the way in which I read it, the voice of what I read with it, because it is like ridiculous. And I just didn't take it very seriously, which I think I went into it not taking it very seriously, like even before you know what I mean?
Well, and like given the title, how could you like take it seriously?
I know.
I mean, I feel like
and the one that was a surprise in a bad way was, and this is again probably more about me than anybody else, was like Crazy Rich Asians. I picked up at like this like the secondhand bookstore, and I was like, oh, I love that movie. I love that movie. I watch it a lot. I really enjoy that movie. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna read this. Here's what happened. You really have to know rich things for me. Like, I liked the movie because the opulence and the like over the topness is very clear, and I don't have to know. Much of the book is explaining that to me by like labels, and that's like not interesting to me. So I did not love that book, but it was really funny though, because I love that movie so much. But I read the book and I'm like, wow, that was really underwhelming. But
I didn't have like a good surprise book. I didn't write one down. I really slacked on my homework a little bit, but I did have a bad surprise book. Which and the bad surprise about this book has been out for a really long time. And everyone has been like reading it and loving it for like decades. I feel like it came out like in high school, like when we were in high school or something. I never read it.
Never read it. 1 second, sis.
Okay.
1997. We were in high school.
Literally, we were in high school. Okay. And like since it came out, like everyone is like, this is an amazing book. Every woman needs to read this book. It's so amazing. So finally, 25 years later, I get around to reading The Red Tent by Anita Diamant. Okay. This book, this is what I feel like about this book. I feel like, okay, did I listen to the right book? Did I listen to something else? Because what I listened to was terrible, and everyone loves this book. Like the book that I listened to, that I am fairly certain was The Red Tent, literally 3/4 of the book was women having babies. And that's it. That was like the only thing they could do. It was the only thing that could happen. It was literally the only thing that did happen, other than the men were assholes and the women were having babies. And I'm like, what is so great about it? Like, for me, I think the surprising part was like, how and why did everyone think that this is the most amazing book that everyone needs to read? And like, literally the only thing I can come up with is that when this came out in like 1997, there wasn't very much like speculative fiction, historical fiction around like historical women, right? Especially biblical women.
Particularly biblical women, yeah.
Right. And so this was maybe sort of like one of those first forays into like telling some women's stories that had never been told before and were never even thought about before.
Right.
So in that sense, I could see like, okay, that because of the importance of telling those stories,
right,
that could make it amazing. But the book and the story itself, I literally had to force myself to turn it on. I listened to it on Audible.
I do also, I just saw this meme about representation and that representation matters. And I can see where it might not be the, 25 years later, looking back and like the amount of literature that we currently have that is, but the representation of that, and for women to finally see that on the page, and for it to be a God, like a Bible thing, right? Like that is like giving it that sort of quote unquote credence. It's kind of BS. But I can also
it
still
means something to people. So
but yes, and for particularly for a generation of women who weren't only not, who never saw that and were never given permission to actually engage that birth story and that part of their humanity in a meaningful, vivid, honest, and spiritual way. Oh, I was going to tell you this. So, because I do keep stats on my reading.
Oh, yes.
And I was pretty proud of myself I think I've been working on this like 4 or 5 years now. Like
it's been a few years, definitely.
Really trying to shift both the gender of who I read, as well as trying to read more people of color and be really intentional about that. So authors of color. This year, I kept my stats, sis. You'll be so proud of me.
You're good.
30% male, 70% female or non-binary.
Nice.
So that I felt pretty good about. Actually, one of my favorite authors is non-binary, River Solomon. And then authors of color versus white authors was 44% white and 66% authors of color. I usually try to keep my fiction and nonfiction about like 50-50 to like 60-40. It was 66 and 44.
Well, it's such a good feeling when you're being intentional about something, and then it actually like turns out that way in the end too.
Right. I have the data to like show my intentionality.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's just like you feel like you're trying so hard, and then you get to the end of the year, you're like, damn it, 50% men? What the, So
it's true.
Enough already. So that's awesome. That's like super fantastic to feel like, okay, yes, I'm being intentional, and I'm actually seeing the results of that intentionality. Yeah.
I feel like it's like
my big thing that I wanted to share with everyone, because you did your author thing, so that was really great. And it took me a minute to come up with like, okay, well, what was like my thing this year? So this is the thing that I'm sort of patting on my back, myself on the back about, is I discovered the public library.
Me too, though.
Yeah. Like, it sounds so stupid because we always went to the library growing up, Hannah. Like, we walked to that library. I cannot even tell you how many times. And that sucker was like at least a mile or mile and a half.
At least a mile away. Yep.
The Bucks County Library that's in Yardley is literally like 2 miles from my house. It's like no big deal. And all of the Bucks County libraries are connected. Yep. So if any of the Bucks County libraries have it, you can get it. And they get it within like a day or 2. I mean, I don't think I've ever waited longer than 3 days to get anything that I requested from the Bucks County Library. And I went back through and I counted how many books I got from the library this year, just like off out of memory. I did it, and a quarter. I did like 24 books.
That's really
from the library.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I'm like, okay, if those are even just $10 a pop, which that's a cheap book, but whatever.
Right.
That's like $250.
you know what? I'm going to do this and give it to Lionel so that he knows, because I did read a lot of these books from the library this year.
Yeah.
I mean, I also have 136 books, and I probably have 250 sitting literally just in the one spot of my shelf to be read. And I just bought 6 yesterday.
Yeah.
So, and I have another order coming from the bookshop. But I did, and I actually have, I gotta go to the library when I go get the boys today. We're gonna walk up to the library. Yes, it's -7 degrees, but this is why we wear winter clothes.
Yeah.
This is why, so that we can do those things, because it's a
Yeah,
block
yours
and a
is
half.
literally like 2 blocks away. Yours
Yes,
is so
it's a block and a half away from us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm with you.
So yes, I do feel like my accomplishment
That is
this
awesome,
year was finding the library, getting my library card, and like figuring out their system on like how to, you know, reserve things and all this kind of stuff. Because like I was very proud of myself for going to the library, getting my library card.
All right. I love you. I gotta go.
All right, love you too, Ian.
All right.